Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Be Qur'an podcast, where we journey through the Qur'an one verse at a time. I'm your host, Ali.
And I'm Fatima. Together, we'll explore the timeless wisdom of the Qur'an, reflect on its meanings, and offer insights that guide us toward a spiritually enriched life.
Whether you're tuning in during your morning drive, relaxing at home, or wrapping up your day, this podcast is here to inspire your heart and deepen your connection with the Holy Qur'an.
In today's episode, titled Imam Ali in the Quran and His Followers, we'll explore the foundations of Shia belief, how the Quran reflects the legacy of Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and the noble path of the Ahlul Bayt.
Let's begin. Bismillah.
Today, we're digging into some sources you've shared, focusing on a really significant figure, Imam Ali, peace be upon him.
That's right. And specifically his connection to the Qur'an and what that means for, well, understanding the basics of Shia belief and the path of the Ahlul Bayt.
Exactly. Our mission here is to unpack these sources, pull out the key ideas, and, make sense of it all together.
And I think for anyone maybe new to this particular perspective, these sources offer a way in. It's a sincere look, trying to be accessible, using the Qur'an and history as a guide.
Yeah, letting the sources guide us. So let's dive straight into the big question the material raises. It stresses how incredibly central Imam Ali is in Shia Islam.
His leadership, the Imad, is presented as fundamental.
Right, and the sources mention that verse in Surah Maryam, verse 3, saying, Islam was perfected on the day he was declared successor. That's huge.
It really underscores his importance, yes.
But then comes the question, if he's that crucial, why isn't his name, explicitly written everywhere in the Quran? That's what these sources tackle.
It's a really good question, and the sources actually offer, well, several angles, different layers to think about.
Okay, let's unpack them. What's the first perspective?
So the first point is about how we find truth generally. The sources suggest we should look for qualities, for attributes, not just fixate on name.
I remember the analogy they used, like proving prophethood.
Exactly.
You don't just accept someone's claim, right? You look deeper. You examine their character, their infallibility, being protected from error in delivering the message, any miracles.
Precisely. Anyone can claim something. It's the qualities that are the real proof.
So the argument is the Qur'an describes him, even if it doesn't always name him.
Yes, that's the idea. The sources say the Qur'an is full of verses describing qualities and actions that narrations, accepted even beyond Shia traditions, link directly to Imam Ali.
So the evidence is woven in through descriptions.
Exactly. Think about Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 55. Your guardian is only Allah and His Messenger and those who have believed, who establish prayer and give zakah while they are bowing.
Right, the famous incident of giving the ring during ruku, the bowing in prayer.
The sources recount that story. A person in need comes into the mosque, Imam Ali is praying, and while bowing, he gestures for the person to take his ring.
And the sources emphasize that the Prophet himself confirmed this verse was about that specific act.
Yes, and crucially, the source and highlight that word inama at the start. It means only and only, exclusive.
So it limits this guardianship, this wilaya.
It limits it to Allah, His Messenger, and then, this very specific description, those who give charity while bowing in prayer.
Which is such a unique event, historically tied to Imam Ali.
Exactly. So the sources argue the description itself identifies him as that third guardian. It's the quality, the unique action.
Okay, and what about that other verse, Surah An-Nisa 4.59? Obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority among you. Ulil amr minkum. How does that fit?
Well, connecting that to the idea of qualities, the sources raise a really important point. Allah commands unconditional obedience here.
Obey them, just like you obey Allah and the messenger.
Right. And Allah wouldn't command unconditional obedience to someone who could make mistakes or lead people astray. That implies the quality of
Infallibility. They have to be infallible.
Precisely. So the sources argue that this command points to individuals who possess that specific quality of infallibility. And they identify these as the imams from the Ahlul Bayt, starting with Imam Ali.
So again, it's the quality infallibility, not just a title or name, that identifies the ulil amr.
Exactly. It shifts the focus.
Okay, that's a strong first point. Focus on qualities and attributes, backed by verses and context. What's the second reason the sources give?
The second reason looks at the bigger picture, like the purpose of life itself. The sources suggest life is meant to be a trial, a test.
Okay, so Allah gives us tools, intellect, history, the the Qur'an.
But he doesn't just hand over all the answers on a plate. It's not meant to be too obvious.
Like the source said, a good professor teaches you how to find answers, not just gives them out.
That's the analogy, yes. Allah wants you to use your intellect to research, investigate, reflect on the signs.
So finding the true representatives, the ones who deserve that obedience, requires effort.
It requires sincere effort. It's part of the test. How dedicated are you to seeking truth? So not having the name everywhere isn't hiding it. It's part of the process, encouraging that active search.
Fostering active faith, not passive acceptance. Makes sense. Okay, point 1, qualities. Point 2, the trial of research. What's number 3?
The third point involves, well, divine wisdom and protecting the Qur'an itself.
Protecting the Qur'an. How would mentioning Imam Ali's name explicitly risk that?
Well, the sources argue that given the intense hostility towards Imam Ali from certain groups later on.
Right, the sources mentioned the Umayyads cursing him from the pulpits. For 70 years.
70 years! Imagine that level of animosity, if his name had been clearly and undeniably stated in numerous verses.
Those enemies might have tried to change the text or reject that version.
Exactly. They might have tried to tamper with it, remove verses, similar to what, according to these sources, happened with some previous scriptures like the Torah and Bible.
But the sources stress Allah's guaranteed the Qur'an's preservation.
Absolutely, until the Day of Judgment. And the sources suggest one way Allah ensured this was by not making Imam Ali's name such an explicit, easy target for those who wanted to corrupt the text.
So the truth is still there, but protected from direct alteration.
It's discoverable for those who sincerely look, using the methods we discussed, but safeguarded from that kind of malicious editing. It's presented as part of Allah's meticulous plan.
Okay, so we have look for qualities, life's a trial requiring research, and protecting the Qur'an's integrity. But then the sources kind of pivot, don't they?
They do. The fourth point actually challenges the whole premise that his name is never mentioned.
So some scholars argue it is there, just maybe not how you'd first expect.
Precisely. The sources introduce arguments that his name is present, but it requires a bit more reflection to see it.
And this involves the tongue of truth idea, lisan sidku.
Yes. The sources point us to Prophet Ibrahim's prayer in Surah Ash-Shu'ara, verse 84. He prays, and grant me a tongue of truth among the later generations.
Lisan sidku, which the sources say isn't just about reputation, but maybe asking for a person.
Right. A symbolic way of asking for someone from his descendants who would truly embody truth and carry his legacy forward. A worthy spiritual heir.
Okay, Ibrahim prays for this truthful successor.
Then, the sources take us to Surah Maryam, chapter 19, verse 50. Allah mentions blessing Ibrahim's family and says, and we gave them a tongue of truth, Aliyah. Lisan sidqin, Aliyah.
Aliyah. And this is the linguistic puzzle piece.
This is where it gets interesting. The sources argue linguistically, you describe a tongue as truthful, eloquent, maybe sharp. But describing a tongue as high, Aliyah, is unusual. It doesn't quite fit grammatically or semantically as a typical adjective for tongue.
It sounds a bit odd in Arabic, apparently.
A bit peculiar, yes. So the sources propose, what if Aliyah here isn't an adjective? What if, especially in Surah Maryam, which names many individuals...
What if it's the name itself, Ali?
That's the argument, that Aliyah here refers to Imam Ali. They argue that if you look at who, from Ibrahim's lineage via Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them both, truly defended Islam and upheld their legacies.
History points strongly to Imam Ali as fulfilling that role.
He's presented as the answer to Ibrahim's prayer, the embodiment of that tongue of truth.
And the sources mention Dua Kumail also reinforcing this connection.
Yes, they suggest phrases within that famous supplication echo this idea of Imam Ali fulfilling Ibrahim's prayer.
So the argument is his name is there, embedded in the Qur'an, fulfilling prophecy, but it requires that deeper look, that research.
Exactly. It ties back to the need for pondering and investigation.
Okay, fascinating. So we've explored reasons why the name might not be explicit everywhere and the argument that it actually is there subtly. Now, the sources shift to something very practical. What does being a follower, a Shia of Imam Ali and the Ahlul Bayt actually entail?
Right. This moves from the why to the how. How does one live this path? The sources outline the characteristics of a true Shia based on sayings from the Imams themselves.
What kind of characteristics are we talking about?
Things like actively doing good, bringing beauty into the world, avoiding anything indecent, being quick to serve others, volunteering, and crucially, placing hope only in Allah's mercy.
And there was that really vivid description attributed to Imam Ali himself.
Oh, yes, a powerful description. He said his true followers have patience like a mountain, true knowledge of God and religion.
Their lives are based on humbleness, intense worship, faces yellow, eyes red from crying for Allah.
Lips constantly remembering God, accepting hunger for discipline, faces that remind you of God.
Lanterns in darkness. That's a striking image.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the sources then introduce this incredibly potent idea building on that.
Which is?
Since people today can't see the Ahlul Bayt directly,
They lived centuries ago.
we, their followers now, are meant to be the walking, talking catalogs of who they were.
The walking, talking catalogs. Wow, that phrase from the source really lands.
Doesn't it? Like a company's catalog shows off its best products. The sources say we are supposed to show the world the reality of the Ahlul Bayt. Their character, their teachings, their justice, their devotion. People look at us to understand them.
So being a follower isn't just belief, it's a massive responsibility to actually reflect those qualities in how you live.
A profound responsibility. The sources really emphasize that weight.
Yeah.
How good is the reflection you are presenting?
Right. So let's recap. We dove into the sources on why Imam Ali's name isn't explicit everywhere, looking for qualities, life is a trial, needing research, protecting the Qur'an, and the counter-argument that his name is there, like in the concept of lisan sidquliyah. And then we explored what being a true follower means, those deep characteristics of piety, service, and patience, culminating in that powerful idea of being a living reflection, a walking, talking catalog.
And our goal was just to present those ideas clearly, sincerely, based on the sources you provided as a foundation for understanding.
Absolutely. It suggests, like you said, this understanding is just the start of a lifelong journey.
Indeed.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe here's a thought to take with you, spinning off that catalog analogy from the sources. If we are meant to be the walking, talking catalogs of the Ahlul Bayt today, reflecting their reality, take a moment. Consider the quality of the reflection you are presenting to the world. How closely does it mirror those profound characteristics we discussed from the sources? It's a question for ongoing reflection.